All right, looks like we are recording, and I am super excited to have on the program Shakira Free. And Shakira came to me highly recommended. I was doing an interview with the UK-based activist Chris Hines, and I was asking Chris, who are some activists that should be on my radar that I should maybe talk to? And your name came up, Shakira, and so I'm really excited to have you. So Shakira is a veterinarian and a longtime animal rights activist who I'm going to get to know during this conversation because all I know about her is what I've seen on her social media. So welcome to the program, Shakira.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much.
All right, so let's just take me back since I know so little. Just take me back to like how this all got started for you, being a veterinarian and your move into animal rights activism.
So, I guess since I was a child, I just fell in love with animals, and just had this innate way that I wanted to protect them and do everything I could to give them a good life. Like to me, that was really important. Luckily, that was really encouraged by my late father, who really encouraged me to have animals and would kind of really like empower me to, I guess, just give them a good life as well and watch me like thrive in those situations. I would spend hours at the library, and any animals in my area, people would start to call me, and I would come out to little mice and little animals when I was a kid. I then went through school, obsessed with animals, always trying to make everything about animals, although that also got me in trouble. And then went through to college and university where I studied a veterinary health degree. So I'm actually a veterinary nurse. So in the US, it's known as a vet tech.
Mm,
And I qualified in 2009. And yeah, like I've just always been very keen to ensure that animals like get what they need, and unfortunately that seemed to be a real problem through my work in the veterinary sector, through my training, and then once I started consulting and actually meeting members of the public and working in charities and doing lots of different work, it was just so evident to me that we are just at a constant crisis with the ways that animals are treated and cared for. I've worked in lots of different facilities, so from like a normal GP vet clinic, through to multiple different charity clinics as well across the UK, which is where I stumbled upon the concept of being vegan. I was already vegetarian, and somebody said, "Oh, we're gonna go vegan for Lent. Do you want to join in?" And I do love a challenge, so
mm.
and I was very influenced by people that I really looked up to there. And then basically watched Earthlings, and that was the end of that. There was no turning back for me. I had actually worked on a dairy farm about 5, 6 years before that,
Mm.
because I wanted large animal work and experience so that I could feel confident with large animals. And I remember the dairy farm actually very well. And afterwards, I was so shocked from what I had seen that I tried to like source soy milk and other alternatives, but veganism just wasn't a thing then at all.
Mhm.
Um,
What time
and
what time period are we talking about now? This is like a long time
gosh,
ago, I assume.
yeah, I mean, this was when I was still at college. This would have been like 2007, 2008, I think.
Okay, gotcha.
Um, and then yeah, then again, then I went vegan, which was strange back then. I think I just survived on Pringles and Oreos and random snacks and kind of got myself through. But there was no turning back for me once I had watched those things. There was no way I could
Mm.
change, what I knew, and change my lifestyle in any way. Um, then I then went into a consulting role where I was like front of house really, and dealing with a lot of welfare issues, cruelty issues, and kind of problems with dogs and like not coping in the veterinary sector, like in the environment. So to do a lot of political campaigning for dogs as well back then. You guys will often call them pit bulls. Over here, we do have pit bull type dogs, but the laws here are very, very strict and very, very difficult. So I started to do political campaigning and pressure campaigning on MPs and using all the platforms that I could to try and create change. And just found myself very passionate about lots of other areas, wildlife, kept as pets, that kind of thing, something I'm really passionate about.
mhm,
And then I think from being vegan and then stepping into more of the animal rights scene, I then started to just see that how on earth can we achieve animal rights while welfareism is just such a normalized problem? And started to kind of look at, different papers and different philosophies about welfareism, why it was just going to
mhm,
be permanently very problematic and just non actually progressive. So yeah, and then just got very frustrated with the way things were and felt compelled to start to be more involved in animal rights actions, which went on over a couple of years. As I say, it did get me in a lot of trouble, but I'm still licensed and still able to practice. But I felt
mhm,
I've faced a lot of adversity along the way. But I've been
mhm.
to a lot of farms and I've witnessed, the standards of care, the legal standards of care for animals across lots of different farms in the UK and across Europe as well. So now I kind of advise and lecture on animal care on the front line, and one-to-one rehab and kind of community decision making really for animals like within this community. And the reason being is I just don't really feel that, if I have a chicken that comes into my care, I'm not the only sole person that should be making a decision unless I'm 100% sure. So
Mhm.
I try to encourage people to make decisions in groups with lots of different insights and information. Um, and my kind of number one goal really is to try and ensure that all animals receive equal access to decent healthcare, regardless of their species. So that's kind of like my main mission.
Mhm,
And then the other part of now what I do heavily is pet shop investigation work.
mhm.
So I'm very fueled up on that at the moment because I'm writing a very annoyed letter as we speak, because we've gathered so much evidence now, but the local authorities are just doing nothing. So we're kind of
Right.
ramping that up next. So yeah, I guess that's my story. I've done a lot of lectures and conferences, which I really enjoy doing, and workshops and stuff. And yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell, really.
Interesting. Okay. Well, cool. Well, we have something in common. We both went vegan from watching Earthlings, and so yeah, that did it for me as well. So you had, when I was scrolling through your social media, you talked about pit bulls a little bit
Mm,
during the course of it. Yeah, I saw a lot of that on your social media, like a lot of focus on that what you guys call in the UK that breed specific legislation,
yeah.
which I had to sort of I was sort of unaware of. But what can you tell me about that? Because it seemed like it's a real issue in the UK, and it's something that I'm sort of ignorant of over here in the States.
Okay. So, so BSL, yeah, breed specific legislation. It's actually a concept that is huge in America, but in very
Oh, is
different
it? Okay.
states, and it's
All right.
enforced differently by different ordinances as well. But it's a big problem. So basically, it's like a legal discrimination against dogs that look a certain way.
Mm,
And the reason, well, the supposed reason of this legislation is to reduce dog bites. So basically, what the police and the government believe is that a dog that looks a certain way is more likely to bite and kill somebody.
mm,
And there's just no evidence, despite all these years of research and information, to basically prove and predict that a dog's conformation equates to risk. And yeah, that's basically the kind of reason behind the legislation. So yeah, basically that law is just never ever going to work because it never gets to the root of the problem.
mhm,
So people get bitten by dogs all the time for a variety of different reasons, and depending on the type of dog that does or carries out the bite will depend then on the reaction that happens. So when someone
mm,
gets bitten by a Chihuahua or Yorkshire Terrier, it's often laughed off. It's not seen as a big deal. But the dog is biting for a reason. There's always a reason for behaviour. And basically, the bigger the dog, the more damage that's going to happen. And there are obviously some breed traits that can encourage certain types of bite behaviour. Now,
mm,
one thing that many people don't seem to understand the concept of and just cannot seem to grasp is that pit bull type dogs are crossbreed dogs. It's not a real breed, it's a mishmash of dogs that basically look a certain type of way. So the
mm,
blocky head, the slim body, fairly deep chest, and yeah, basically quite like a square head, basically. So you've got people calling dogs pit bulls that are 15 kilos to 40 kilos. So it's just basically people's perception of what they believe the dog to be, what they believe the dog to resemble. But basically, none of that is a risk factor. The risk factor is multiple things that are happening in the environment, and obviously the dog's behaviour. Most of these things are predictable, but basically, the evidence is always that the dog is often either known or unknown to the incident, and it sounds a bit complicated. So,
Mm,
just as an example, a stranger walking into someone's house, right, and then the dog has then reacted and killed that person. Now, someone walking into someone's home that has a dog is always going to be a risk, and there's just not been any proper risk management put in place. You also get situations where there's been a major trigger and the dog has reacted badly or in a way that we don't like, sometimes with people that they have a bond with. So these things are quite unpredictable, and breed has never been a constant factor. So what's basically happened is a type of dog that is fashionable with a certain type of people or a certain type of person is then basically utilized as like a status symbol for that. So the government will
mm.
just target certain groups or certain statuses of people and attach a breed to that. So, in the past it's been Dobermans or German Shepherds or Rottweilers, and now it seems to be these bull breed type dogs. So um, basically, there's just no evidence to say that a certain type of dog will kill and hurt somebody. The problem is the size of the dog obviously is going to change the way that the damage is taking place. And don't get me wrong, I've seen serious, serious damage from dogs, and it's terrifying. It's very, very frightening. But basically, we've had this law in place since 1991, and there's been no reduction in dog bites whatsoever. We've now added on another type of dog, which is again another crossbreed, genetically
Mm,
manipulated dog called the Bully XL. Again, complete variety of dogs. You could get someone
mm,
calling a dog a Bully XL that's 20 kilos or a Bully XL that's 35 kilos. Um,
mm.
and so again, it's another crossbreed type dog. It's caused, a lot of upset for a lot of different people, and dogs continue to lose their lives. But the same thing is happening in that the public still don't know how to avoid being bitten by dogs.
Yeah.
And the issue is, again, with trainers, behaviourists, vets, there's so many factors of problems that can equate to a reason that a dog bites somebody. So the banning of these dogs will do absolutely nothing to reduce dog bites. And we've known that for years. The government has refused to listen, despite lots of people explaining and showing lots of different examples of why it doesn't work, and it never has. But
Mm.
it's just like, to me, it just feels like a way to discriminate, kill a bunch of dogs, and discriminate against certain type of people who wish to have those dogs.
I see. I see. Okay. So you're saying this is a big problem in the States as well, which I didn't
Hmm.
know. I guess probably just because the animal rights movement so largely focuses on farm animals
Yeah.
and lab animals and stuff like that. So it's weird because like dogs and cats, like are the most beloved animals, but sometimes they're sort of overlooked in our movement, honestly.
Hmm.
Like yeah. Uh okay, so interesting. So where are we on that now? Like, well, I guess starting with in the UK, like um where are you at with that now? As you say, like the government's not listening. So what's the latest on that?
There is a campaigning group called Don't Ban Me, License Me. They took sort of deference to court basically to try and basically say that the ruling and the addition of this breed type onto the ban list was like unlawful, because basically there wasn't like a consultation in terms of like the impact that was going to happen.
Hmm.
Hundreds of thousands of dogs have been killed in the meantime. More of those dogs will die and end up dead, and that will continue. It has done for pit bulls, but now the focus is on these XL dogs. Pit bulls are kind of slipping through the radar, and they're
Hmm.
kind of now ending up in rehoming centres, and people just don't seem to be so worried about them, which is kind of nice. Um,
Right.
I wouldn't say we're any further along. There's been multiple instances that have happened since, and I don't think that we're if I'm honest, I don't think we're ever going to solve the problem, and I hate to be very like defeated by it. But after watching all of this stuff unfold and being heavily involved, a few years ago with campaigning to like where we're at now, I actually just don't think that we're gonna really have a way out. I think the government is so set in stone about this law, because basically what will happen is, if that law was lifted and a dog killed somebody, basically they're gonna feel like they've made the wrong move, but people will continue to die from being bitten by dogs. That will continue to happen. And it simply just adds the fact that a lot of people just cannot read dog behavior. And the thing is, accidents are always going to happen. And the element of risk is not the dog, sorry, the breed type.
Hmm.
So I actually just don't think that until we, it's just such a complex thing to even begin to really unfold and explain like in a short conversation, because it's so complicated, because there's so many factors that come into play. But I think the issue with dog bites will continue no matter how we kind of go forward. There are countries that have instilled slightly different legislation which has been effective and it has reduced dog bites, but the UK is just so slow. Like, we're so slow on
Hmm.
anything, and like we're just scared of like making any like bold statements or any bold moves.
Hmm.
So if I'm honest, I don't think there's going to be any movement on this whatsoever. And people
Yeah.
will continue to die by dogs. But again, like with anything, the press is always going to pick up on certain types of dogs as being like media worthy rather than other dogs being media worthy, and that's an issue across America as well.
Yeah.
There's a very good resource called the Animal Farm Foundation. I actually did do some work with them a few years ago in New York, and they've got great resources. And the National Canine Research Council, they've got a lot of evidence papers on the effects of BSL and basically just how it's never been useful at all.
Hmm. Gotcha, gotcha. Well, that's a sad situation. I mean, it's interesting you say like the UK government is so slow to act, because that stands in contrast to when I look over it and I see like there are just so many UK animal rights activists that I look up to, and it just seems like activism's always popping off in the UK. Like, it just seems like where it's at for me. So why is there like this mismatch of like, all these really bold activists, but this really not bold UK government? What's the deal with that?
I think I think what was happened is we've got really comfortable with this kind of ongoing message where the UK is thinks it's very superior,
Mm,
and we're very comfortable with this. There's a specific sentence that's thrown around a lot in lots of different conversations, papers, websites, where they say the UK is a nation of animal lovers, and it just is not the case whatsoever. So it's like,
mm,
because we have that and we say, oh, we've got the best animal protection laws in the world, we're very comfortable. But, as per the RSPCA farm investigations by Animal Rising, it's very clear that that is absolutely not the case. We are just as
yeah.
bad as plenty of other countries. So I think we just become very comfortable with that, and we're very good at keeping things very hidden.
Hmm.
And I think, one thing I talk about a lot is, if we can't get it right for dogs, how on earth are we supposed to get it right for any other species? And this is a chronic issue. It's obviously why I
Hmm.
do this pet shop stuff, because so many people have different species. I mean, a lot of people I don't think are that good at caring for dogs. I hate to say it, but in all my years, 15 years I've been involved in this industry, a lot of people still don't really understand their dog, or even meet their needs. And it's a really harsh thing to say, but I just feel like it's true,
Yeah, yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. And something that you deal with all the time. Well, you had mentioned too, like getting in trouble, like so you've been involved in rescue work and taken a lot of risk for animals. And
Mm,
it's interesting because you have at least with the breed specific legislation issue, you feel like sort of pessimistic. But I imagine like if you're taking these bold actions and you're taking risk for animals, I imagine you wouldn't be doing that if you didn't think like there was a chance that we could win, right? So, is that the case, or and why is it that you've kind of come to this point in your life where you're like, this is worth it for me. I will take these risks for these animals, and that's something that's important for me.
I think when you've spent hours and hours in Parliament, in meetings, roundtable discussions, debates, live online webinars, emails back and forward, you're seeing the reality of these animals in different situations, whether it's farm, pet shop, veterinary clinic, dog training, dog rescue, which is also not great here.
Mm,
And you watch these people, these advocates and these campaigners work tirelessly for years without being paid. Right, I would say the majority of the work I do not get paid for. And there's so much sacrifice that comes with that. Family, relationships, all these other things that a lot of people don't want to talk about. But it's a
mm,
reality of someone that's very dedicated to their gift or something that they want to change in the world. And yeah, I just think that I just got to a point where I was seeing, all this footage from these farms, say it's dairy or egg farms or, slaughterhouses or whatever, with all of these breaches. Yeah, Animal Justice Project in the UK, fantastic, very good at doing investigative work. And they're showing all these breaches, all these problems, all these illegal activities that are going on farms. And basically nothing comes of it. Nothing comes of it for the farmer. They don't actually, these farms don't go to prison. They don't get farms closed down. They
mm,
continue to work. You might get a slaughterhouse worker that's like sacked, for example. These people aren't going to jail for doing the most abhorrent, violent things to animals. These people are in paid positions. So the lack of enforcement is just so chronic amongst all these industries. I just thought, what is the quickest way that I can help animals? And I met other people who were feeling the same. And the thing that I can bring to the table is to make sure that any sick and injured animals receive decent vet care, because that's also a bit of a barrier. When rescues are taking place and they need to get good access to vet care, and obviously that was what I could bring to the table. So there were some rescues that took place that certainly did need my assistance, and those animals survived because of my input. And unfortunately, the law is a certain type of way here. And at the end of the day, you're going to be judged by people in the court of law, by people that probably ate animals for lunch. So the
right.
odds are never going to be in our favour, unfortunately. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I know there's progression, and I do think that the world is changing positively for the awareness of what's going on. But these animals are stuck in those places right now, and trying to
Right.
campaign to close a chicken farm, I mean, for those chickens in this moment, it's not going to do anything for them.
Yeah. So I know that you had told me before we started recording that you had a conviction, and so I don't know the exact specifics of your case, but I imagine, like at some point you were trying to, speak for yourself and address the court, the judge, and it's just very powerful to me that you say that it's sort of like a sense of desperation. Like, we've tried all these things. We've tried to go to Parliament. We've tried to talk. We've done all the letter writing. We've done it all the ways that you told us this is the how you're supposed to
Mm.
make change. And what's ironic is, like, I since I've been working closely with Wayne Shung, who also went to prison for rescuing animals, and I remember going to like a hearing with him, a probation hearing, and the judge, who was like a new judge who had just come to the case newly to that case and was looking it over, he was like, "Well, why are you doing this? Why not do this a different way?" And it's just like, we've tried everything. We've tried,
Mm.
like you mentioned, like all these people who have been investigated and they're getting, a slap on the wrist at best, if anything. Um,
Mm.
and then they're throwing activists in jail. Like, what are we supposed to do? Like, I, yeah, I wonder if you were able to sort of convey that during your trial, or if you're even able to talk about that.
Mm. Um, I think it just comes back to the same thing, in that the majority of the public believe in the law, and they believe in the ways that which we've told them that animals are protected. So it's almost like no matter the evidence that we have, we're just not believed.
Hmm. Hmm.
My probation officer said to me, "Do you not think you should be here?" And I said, no, I don't think I should. And she said, why? And I said, well, I was explaining that the farm that we had rescued a collapsed dying pig from, we'd videoed them. There was sows there that were eating dead piglets in the farm. And
Mm,
she said to me, oh, is that your belief? And I said, no, that's what I saw. If you want to have a look, I've got the video on my phone. So I think people are so disillusioned with actually what goes on. And I think the animalising investigations recently, showing the RSPCA approved farms and just how absolutely awful they are. I I kind of was very hopeful that something very positive would come from that because it was just so clear. I mean, the investigation was fantastic.
it was.
And I've met some of those animals from those farms, and it's just so clear. And you know, you've got this big charity brand that's supposed to stamp animal protection,
Hmm.
but they're also being funded by an industry that is violent, inherently violent towards animals. So if we've got that and the public believe that the RSPCA is there to protect animals, yet are participating in those schemes, profiting off of those schemes, and then have done nothing since those major investigations. Multiple people have left the RSPCA. Caroline Lucas and Brian May, Chris Packham. These are like household names in the UK.
Yeah.
And despite all of that, nothing has happened, and the system has not changed. So yeah, it's a real shame to be so negative, but I don't really know where else we can move to, because I think anything other than the complete closure of these places isn't going to change the situation for those animals. They're already stuck there, they're already in it.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to empower people with information of how to assist these animals when they do escape, or they do get rescued, or they do come out. If there's a lorry crash and there's 10,000 chickens in the road, what can we do about that? So I guess that's my niche, and kind of all I'm able to do now, because I can't do anything else,
Yeah. Yeah.
apart from try to educate and be someone that can support animals in a one-to-one if they need one-to-one care.
Yeah. Well, and be careful what you answer to this, because I know you didn't want to get too into the specifics of your case, but you had just mentioned this pig who was eating, piglets, their piglets, and that's obviously a horrific detail. And now, having like sort of been a part of several trials I saw, and for one of the trials I was in charge of handling the exhibits, and I know that we would arrive to court with the plan to show all these different clips that we had already pre-selected, to show the jury so that they could see the conditions of the animals during this trial, and we would at the very last minute be disallowed from showing them. And I'm wondering, like, during your trial, were people able to see, or at least hear about what you had found on this farm?
Um, so the trial for me was a little bit different than to some of my co-defendants.
Hmm.
So I actually can't verify that, but I know that it was potentially part of our evidence package. Um, I know that evidence has been disallowed like that, especially very graphic things have not been allowed in quite a few cases that are similar.
Hmm.
But there was a case that was won a couple of years ago, actually, in Kent, where this was I think, a sheep slaughterhouse, and the workers there, I think the owner of the slaughterhouse actually set the vet on fire.
Whoa.
Yeah, and had done all sorts of things to the sheep as well. And I believe that the evidence was allowed in that, and actually all the activists were let off. It was a disruption occupation action that took place. I was outside at the time, just supporting. So I believe that evidence was allowed in. But magistrates and crown courts are very, very different. And I think it comes back to the same thing. It's like I just think that the law is so specific, and that people really do believe that animal welfare legislation is strong enough to protect animals from harm. Because it was just wild to me that I was in court for rescuing a sick pig with an infectious disease
Hmm.
on a farm that had already been investigated, and was already front page news with horrendous footage that had been leaked, and yet I was in court and he wasn't. Like,
You're
it
right.
doesn't even make any sense to me.
Right. It's backwards. Yeah, it's backwards. And yeah, like in a lot of these cases, they don't allow you to show the footage because it might be prejudicial, right, to the jury
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something. Yeah. Oh man. Well, I'm sorry you're going through that, and but I'm also grateful to you for putting yourself through that.
It was
Um,
an important experience, and I'm grateful for it all myself. I think it's a really important story that I look forward to being able to tell properly at some point.
yeah, yeah. Do you not to stay negative, but do you feel regret? Do you have any regrets for it? Dealing with the consequences of it now?
No, I mean, it's not been easy. It's not been easy. It's a very lonely place. So I was basically the first veterinary nurse to kind of go through this.
Mm,
So even my insurance company were like, "This is wild." They were
hmm.
extremely helpful, and they were very compassionate towards my cause, and my intentions were very clear. That was like nothing that could be argued. Um, I think it's more that it's just sad that I've had to suffer so much because of what I believe was doing the right thing. So it's not that I have any like regrets or such since like everything's happened. It's just been a very challenging journey to overcome. And yeah, but I think the experiences are really valuable and something that I can share with the community, which I think is like a really important aspect to bring to the table still.
Yeah, yeah. That's sad to me that you described it as lonely too, though, because like I would hope
Mhm.
that you at least had like a lot of support from other activists, at least. And but yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. You know, you've been a veterinarian, vet tech, I guess what we call it, for so long, and I know that even here in the States, like there's this group called Our Honor. I'm sure you know, like Crystal Heath and
Yeah.
veterinarians here who are sort of battling to get veterinarians to take animal care a little more seriously, like the
Hmm.
idea that we would, also eat the animals that we're caring for is also like something like interesting. So, how much pushback have you gotten in your field there in the UK? As someone who does animal rights and as a vegan and all of that, has that been challenging?
I would say yes. I think
Mm,
whenever you're controversial or have a different way of thinking, yes. Um, I guess I like to be a perfectionist in my work with my patients. So, even just little things like, oh, hide that dog from Shakira. Don't show Shakira that dog. Because then, no, I'm like, that's not good enough. We need to do this, we need to do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm doing a home visit. I'm not accepting how this dog's being treated. We need to get this dog off this carer, blah, blah, blah. So
mm,
I guess I'm like a woman of my word, and I won't just settle for something that doesn't feel right. So, reporting people, stuff like that, like I'm not afraid to do those things because that's my duty of care and I feel very passionate about that.
mhm.
Um, I think with any profession that involves ethics, I think there's always going to be like a lot of challenges with that. Um, I could give you 1,000 different examples. I did face a lot of kickback when I first discovered breed bans. When I was working in a charity, I kind of got pulled into the office over that because I was kicking off. I was like, "We are not killing this like 3-month-old puppy. Like, what on earth is going on?
Right.
How is this allowed? How do I not know about this law?" And it's like, "Oh, we're doing something, blah blah blah." They weren't. It was not good enough for me. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and I guess like people's views and things are very messy, and often come with like, a sense of ego, or their own like internal beliefs about what they think or what they know. If I'm working with a vet who maybe has done farm work, we're probably going to have some difficulties, or we could have a really progressive conversation. Um, but the thing is, when you're working in those circumstances, it's really important to kind of keep things moving forward, because no one wants to have like conflict at work when you're dealing with animals. I'd like to try and avoid that.
Hmm.
I did work for a university who tested on beagles, and I didn't actually know that when I took the job.
Mm.
And the way I found out was because there was a protest that was planned outside my clinic. And when I found out, I was fuming. Uh,
Yeah.
I then kind of took it further, and then the head of vivisection then wanted to come and have a conversation with me, and just tried to just gaslight me to try and tell me that what they needed to do to these beagles, and that I should support what they were doing. And I was like, absolutely no chance. But it did mean that anyone else that took employment there was informed about the fact they test on beagles and then kill them at
Mm.
the end of the experiment. But that was also the job that fired me. So
Oh, I see. I see.
I
Yeah.
did feel like a sense of discrimination there. Opportunities weren't given to me, even though I was like absolute top of my game. I didn't even
Hmm.
want more money. I just wanted a different title, because I was dealing with all the cruelty complaints there. And I was, doing an amazing job. I had a lot of clients. I had a very, very good reputation before I was fired and arrested and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that definitely, I think, had a part to play. I mean, veganism is now like a protected belief in this country. But yeah, the tribunal was tough.
Hmm.
But I'm glad that I still tried to fight my corner, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you seem to be someone who has like a ton of conviction and like a deep sense of passion. So I imagine like I'm disappointed that some people have responded to you in that way, just because like I would think like if I had like a work setting and I had someone like Shakira, I would want them around. Like that seemed like somebody I
Thank
would
you.
want around, you know? So I imagine like for at least good-hearted people, like you must be having such an impact on the people around you, I imagine. Just through, I mean, through example alone, I mean, I know you've done like a lot of media and stuff, so you must be like at least like decently well known, like when you have like people in your field and stuff, and they must know like, well, Shakira is someone who really knows her stuff and it really cares about animals. Like if they know anything about you, it should be that you have a deep love for animals, I would assume. And so do you see impacts around you, like with the people that you work with, like in your field?
I would say, thankfully, yes.
Good. Yeah.
I've kind of got like, it's really, really beautiful. I've got like a few like mini me's, like either in the veterinary nursing profession or the vet profession, or activists that are like, you know what, you're right. I do need to physically take this action. So when I was at the Copenhagen Animal Rights Conference, which I highly recommend, it was fantastic, the best conferences I've ever been to.
Yeah.
I had just started doing my de-string work on pigeons. So pigeons that get string caught around their feet or hair, and then it starts to amputate their toes or their feet, and they become very sick and obviously start to starve to death in the street. So I started to do some of these one-to-one rehab string foot cases. But I was inspired by someone in the Netherlands.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I was at the conference, someone said to me, we've got this same problem here. What can we do? We don't have any pigeon rehabbers or advocates. I'm like, you need to do it yourself. Teach yourself how to do it. I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily for lay people doing things that they shouldn't be doing. You need to do it with advice, knowledge, and some experience. I think that's really important to make these cases successful. But yeah, this person was like, I want to be a vet nurse like you. She's got into vet nursing school, super young. She's absolutely smashing it.
Hmm.
And I went to visit them a few months ago, and their pigeon rehab is just absolutely 10 out of 10. They've done so well. So the domino effect of that has been really beautiful to see. And especially
Hmm.
because I did meet some of the pigeons that they had there in rehab, and a lot of them have been released now. So that's been
Hmm.
really beautiful to see. Um, and also, one thing I'm very passionate about is the method of euthanasia.
Okay.
So in a lot of animals, especially small animals, whether it's hamsters, rabbits, or chickens, for example, they're often gassed, and it can be like an irritant, and it's just a horrible. Your last moments with this horrible gas on your face
Mm-hmm.
when you're going to die is just absolutely not something I can stand by or accept. So
Mm-hmm.
I now have been telling people to go for sedation before euthanasia, and it's been really lovely to see that happen, as well as just other methods of euthanasia rather than just always going for gassing first. So that's been really nice to see. And I guess just different methods of rescue and care. And yeah, it's been really lovely to kind of like for people to find me and then come to me for advice, which maybe their vets have like don't know or just haven't applied in a certain way. So that's been like a really interesting experience to be able to like share all of my experience with broilers or pigs or sheep, and then being able to like transfer that. Like I've got a case that
Mm-hmm.
I've been advising on in Australia, and it's been really cool and very successful. So
Oh,
I
wonderful.
think
Yeah.
that that's kind of been the domino effect, of just showing people that with animal care, there's often other options. And it's always important to look at those because unfortunately, certain species will often only get like very limited options, whereas I like to broaden the scope a little bit more just to see what other options we have. So yeah, I would say it has had a domino effect, and certainly through the pet shop work that we started about 8 9 months ago now, has started to have a positive knock-on effect, and people be like, "Oh my God, I didn't even think about that, or I didn't know."
Mm-hmm.
Bill, like we
Mm-hmm.
were saying earlier, it's like animal rights activism has mostly been sort of fueled towards animals that are considered as food. So it's been really
Mm-hmm.
cool to kind of highlight that. And one thing that's really important around that is just like language. Like you won't catch me saying like exotic pets or phrases like that because it's an inappropriate enabling term like we use to
Mm.
describe wild animals that are kept as pets. So just little things like that, which I love to hear and see.
Yeah, nice. Well, I'm glad to hear that there are many yous. Yeah,
Yeah.
that gives me some hope. Yeah. So tell me about the pet store work that you've been doing. As you said, like at the beginning of this interview, you were firing off a letter in annoyance. So what's that all about?
So the pet shop work. So I guess I've been popping into pet shops quite frequently for the last few years, and then kind of honing in on that work much more in the last like 8 months. Um, so luckily, I met my kind of co-founder T. She is a big advocate for birds and decent bird care, and yeah, we got in contact where she posted a photo of a dead baby macaw in a pet shop, and they tried to do a campaign, but it basically just led to people having their cars smashed in rather than being able to take really good action. But these
Oh
pet shops
wow.
are very well protected. They're wildlife traders,
Mhm.
basically. So we basically started going into a lot of pet shops. We've probably covered about 40. And the majority of them are poor conditions, animals that maybe are unwell, just bad facilities, stuff like that. Dead fish is quite common. So we've just been collating sort of evidence and information on each of those shops, writing reports, sending it into the council. We were able to call the RSPCA to kind of flag it, just to tick boxes, but we're now unable to do that because A, they weren't really doing much, but B, they now are saying that they don't deal with it at all, and it's only the local authority councils and animal welfare officers that will deal with it. So basically we haven't really got too far. We've had a couple of shops that have had their licenses revoked or they've closed for various different reasons,
Mm.
but it's deep. Like this is a deep rooted problem. So through kind of going through down these pet shop routes, we're also finding that there's live auctions of animals across the country. Again, kind of legal, not illegal. No one really knows like where the legal line is. But we have been
Mm.
able to rescue a few different animals, which has been really great. We actually rescued a ferret
Nice.
about 2 weeks ago, super random, 10 o'clock at night at the end of the auction. These drunk guys just gave us this ferret that they had auctioned, sorry, that they had purchased for £10 in a bucket. So we were able to get this ferret sorted. There's also like a lot of shows, like there's these bird shows as well, which are up and down the country. And so, yeah, we've just been photographing animals from there and kind of just collating it all into like big documents and files. But it's standardly awful everywhere. And, you know, it's just a miserable, miserable place to be. Like sometimes the anxiety is just overwhelming, but we just have to crack on and get it done. But I think people would be shocked at the photos and video footage that we have of the animals there. Um, so, yeah, it's just a shocking thing that's happening in the UK. And it's not like this has been hidden. This is in public view. This is in plain sight. And it
Right.
just
Yeah.
continues to go on because nobody is doing anything about it.
Until now, right? Yeah. Now that you guys are doing something about
Yeah.
it. Gotcha. So, and this letter that you were writing, it was like had to do with like you found conditions that were horrible in some certain places that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so there's a particular council in the north of England whereby we have reported multiple findings and
Mm,
evidence. We've got proof. We've got a bird who we did like what's called a test purchase. Usually, the trading
mhm,
standards would do that, but trading standards would probably send these animals to God knows where. So we took control over that. We found a bird that was clearly unwell in a notoriously bad shop. Um, Highlighted to the shopkeeper that the bird was unwell. He said the bird wasn't sick. Then he said the bird was sick and that he was going to sell the bird to us. Then 48 hours later, a test purchase happened and we got the bird immediately to an avian specialist where he was found to be imported from the Czech Republic. And that's they some of the birds will have a leg ring on and there will be certain
mm,
numbers or letters on there, which indicates that this bird has been imported from the Czech Republic. This is a massive issue. And he had blood swabs and started some antibiotics and some pain relief. He was clearly unwell, so he was sold in that condition. He came up positive with a disease called PBFD, persisting beak and feather disease, highly infectious. The mortality
mm,
rate is generally high, and basically it means that the entire shop and all of those birds would be infected with that disease.
mm,
So we then found another shop who was unlicensed, and the shopkeeper was actually banned from having animals. We went in there and found very sick wild pigeons in filthy conditions. And then above them was birds that basically they were illegally trying to sell us, have everything on camera, everything. Um, the other day, my colleague found a dead terrapin, was able to do a test purchase on a very, very visibly sick fish. They had a massive gash down the side of the body,
mhm,
and that animal was obviously like that for days, and then sold like that. The fish did later die. This is one of the beta fish that are commonly sold in pet stores, like in very basic tanks, usually very small.
right.
Um, and then we had a chameleon who was unable to open their back feet, so was walking on the tips of their feet. Usually they would grip like this.
Mm,
Um, and I've got the shopkeeper saying, yes, the chameleon can't open their back feet. He is for sale. Not obviously had any veterinary intervention, was for sale like that. Selling sick animals is illegal. So
mm,
again, got everything on video footage. We had two glass lizards, which are like, they're kind of like snakes, but they're actually lizards. They just don't have like proper limb appendages, and had
mm.
facial damage from rubbing the face on the glass.
Wow.
Um, I mean, so many problems, and basically, this council has done absolutely nothing. So we're
Yeah.
now ramping it up to like their seniors, because basically they're just not enforcing the law. And it's
Mhm,
not like this has just happened once; it's happened multiple times. And the shops are just being enabled to behave like this. They're not even getting a written warning. I had a shop that when I went in, I found 14 enclosures with no water,
mm,
and again reported it into the council. They went in, found exactly the same conditions, and they immediately gave them a written warning. Now again, this is still welfarist, right? We're still allowing these people to get away with trading in wild animals,
mhm.
but I feel like our aim of this campaign is kind of to just prove that none of these laws are acceptable and none of them are being enforced, and animals will just continue to suffer. Um, so that's kind of like what the point in the campaign is. I mean, obviously, we'd like to see a ban on pet shops entirely. Of course, we would.
Right.
And there is another campaign group that's targeting specifically on like a very well-known pet shop. Who's like a bit like probably the RSPCA, like supposed to be the top standard. But
Hmm.
because the standards of animal care is so low, they're just as bad as everywhere else.
Right.
So yeah, so kind of our plan is just to highlight that this isn't just like a one bad shop. This is like there's 3,000 pet shops in the UK, and large percentage of them have these standards and have these problems, and that's kind of our aim of the game, really.
Very frustrating too, because yeah, you talked about before, with the rescue work, like yeah, the problem is enforcement. You talked about the animal rising investigation and just how like nothing's being enforced, nothing's getting done. Yeah, it's just like whenever animals are involved, I don't know if this is like just like a broad problem across the board, but when it comes to animals, like that seems to be the deal. Like very lax laws to begin with, very weak laws to
I
even to
mean,
begin with, and
it, it just feels that if an animal is used, there is a level of abuse in some way. Whether
right.
that's using a dog to breed from, there is use, there's profit, there's abuse, of it's non-consensual. And this is happening to companion animals, this is happening to wild animals kept as pets, happening to animals destined to be food. So,
Hmm.
zoos, all these places is exactly the same. As soon as that animal is in a vulnerable state or being profited from, all of their rights go out the window.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier before some of the problems with the language that we use surrounding these animals. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so luckily I work at clinic. He's very good with language. So, for example, like animals, like we wouldn't call like a patient it. They are
Mm-hmm.
referred to as she, he, they, them, or obviously their name.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really call people like animal caregivers owners, because again, it's just this property right all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then in terms of when I talk about wild animals being kept as pets, a lot of people call them exotic pets or exotic animals. And again, it just is like enabling language. So I just don't use phrases like that
Mm-hmm. Hmm. And what is it about exotic pets that you find enabling?
because you're utilizing the term pet, which makes it sound like that's something that either they would choose or that their species
Uh,
makes them appropriate to be pets, which it just simply doesn't.
Right, right. Gotcha. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I also think that this language is important. I know some people like don't think it's as big a deal, but it really does normalize viewing animals in a certain way, I think, if we're speaking in a certain way. Um, yeah. So again, thank you for your work on that because it's like as you mentioned, it's just so overlooked. It's something that most people aren't focusing on. So yeah, and there are animals languishing in these pet stores. It's happening in America too, and I don't think many people are really looking into it, and the people that want to do something about it probably just don't know what to do. Well, that's a good question, I guess. So people like that say they have like a store like in their area that's doing something like this, but they don't know what to do, and they're just like unseasoned at doing things. Like, what should they do about it?
I think the most important thing is gain knowledge on your local laws, and also just be able to use a camera on your phone. Um, Having the ability to take a decent photo of an animal is so important. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, it seems to be like a very underutilized skill. But when you're armed with a mobile phone, you can take fantastic photos and videos, and it's not difficult to do that. Pet shops generally don't mind you taking pictures. It's, oh my God, they're so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. People take photos of animals all the time. So you're
Hmm.
not doing
Hmm.
anything that's would be of concern to them. And it's just kind of knowing your species and know what to look out for. Different species will have different behaviors, which will indicate different problems. You know, unfortunately, there are so many shops which are just, you know, below the bare minimum of giving, you know, snakes even the ability to stretch out, or, you know, the right
Hmm.
food, the right humidity. You know, or some species are kept together who have completely different needs. So kind
Hmm.
of just having some background knowledge will help you pick up on those problems. And this is half the issue. So the people that are supposed to enforce the law also don't have proper understanding of each species. So they might
Hmm.
go into a pet shop and say it's fine. I could go in there and say, I completely disagree. You've missed this, 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 and this. So they're
Hmm.
coming back and telling me, oh, we didn't find any problems in that shop. I guarantee you, I would go in there and find problems.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure you would. Yeah. Um, you've been an activist for so long, that I wonder, like, you know, you seem to be going through ups and downs too. Like, what are the things that get you through? Like, what are the things that you draw inspiration from?
I guess hearing stories of people who are following in my footsteps. So,
Mm,
yeah, there's a couple of girls in Copenhagen that are doing amazing work. And there's some people over in the UK who are aspiring nurses who are doing great work and, you know, working outside their clinic hours to kind of do what they need to do. So knowing that, and they're always like, you're such an inspiration. Hearing that and seeing that in action, you know, them going out of their way to save dogs from euthanasia, for example, or, you know, doing this pigeon rehab, that gives me a great sense of comfort. I think
mhm,
also just feeling that you have common ground with someone, that someone generally does understand where you're coming from and don't kind of I guess just accept things for how they are, like people that want to keep pushing boundaries and do more and say more, and I guess just like give really good support. It's always vulnerable being controversial. It's always vulnerable when like you're the first
mhm,
person to do these things. And certainly from my professional hearing, I mean, I had phenomenal support, and that really helped, because it was extremely lonely. And I think most people, when they become vegan or go down the route of being an activist, it can be very lonely because you're watching people do and participate in things that you know are really violent and really awful, and they kind of claim to love you, and you think, but then why are you involved in these types of things? So I have that, you know, I've gone through that. And I think just learning like decent self-care is something that I've really, really honed into, and I try to like empower other people to do the same. I think watching people rescue animals as well from all sorts of different situations and seeing them have really good care, it's just that's kind of what I live for, really. Knowing
mhm.
that just because I'm not rescuing animals, other people still are, and being able to be there and support and empower them with knowledge of like of what the animal needs,
Mhm,
is really
mhm.
beautiful. And kind of just watching my knowledge or my advice blossom into an animal that's then recovered and then has a beautiful home. That for me is the ultimate.
Yeah. You know, you talk a lot about sort of like the loneliness, the feeling of like being the first to do something or to stand out and stuff. Like, was there like a moment for you, like early on, that was like, would you like point to as like, yeah, that was the moment where like I found the courage to like break through. Like, I knew this was going to be uncomfortable, scary. I felt it, but I just did. You know, like, was there a moment for you? It sounds like there's been many moments for you, but is there anything early you
Yeah,
can point to?
I think I think one thing, there's a couple of specific moments that I'll never forget, and they've mostly been on pig farms, I'd say.
Mm,
Um, I think when I went on my first pig farm and saw the sows lined up, and all they could see was the wall, like they were in cages, and their only view was the wall, like this concrete wall. I just thought, I can't not act like that is never gonna leave me. And I think those moments are like really inspiring. And I guess like the rage of the system is like, I guess it adds fuel to your fire. I think,
mhm,
yeah, when I saw this pig collapsed on the floor, I was really angry. And I think those moments really helped me kind of get through that, knowing that we took the right action to save that pig.
Mm.
And yeah, that was like something that was really amazing. I can't remember the rest of the question, sorry.
It was really that. It was just like, what are those moments that's you sort of like made you like find the courage? Like, but
Oh,
interestingly, you talk about seeing the pigs like looking at the concrete. So I shouldn't assume, but it sounds to me like maybe you were there as an activist, there to rescue, or were you there as a veterinarian?
so in that moment, it was it was an action on a farm that was known to be like a bad farm. And
Mm,
then yeah, when we
mm,
arrived, that was very obvious because the pig had been purposely dumped in the walkway, who was collapsed and unable
yeah.
to stand. So yeah, I mean, I think just always being inspired by also just other people, like, you know, even like Jane Goodall, you know,
Mm,
she's such an
mm,
amazing person, and obviously being inspired by women is something that I, you know, always like just gives more sense of connection as well.
mhm.
And I think just knowing that there are other people that are really trying to do the work. And I think where I've kind of physically had my own suffering through different surgeries, I was born with problems with my hips. I think where I have
Mm.
that sense of knowing and that deep empathy and understanding and compassion to feel what I believe those animals are experiencing, I can't not have that. That's always something that's very present within me. So
Yeah.
it's like I can't fight that. That's just a natural, innate thing within me, and it comes very naturally to me to speak out. And I think where I've been able to articulate myself in different situations and win for those animals, that gives me the courage to keep going. Just as a small
Mm,
example, there's a pet shop in Greece that had a beta fish who was just grey, just hanging in the water in this cup of water, just dying in front of my eyes. And I said, I'm going to buy everything in the shop that I need for this fish, but I'm not buying the fish. I said, you have to give me this fish. Gave me the fish. I was working at a sanctuary out there at the time. And within a week, this fish just blossoms. Bright
oh
purple,
wow.
beautiful fins. He just looked 1,000 times better. And
Hmm.
yeah, my negotiation skills are quite good.
Mm,
And I guess when you have results like that, knowing that being calm or using certain types of language or certain behavior ends in the freedom of those animals,
mm.
that is what keeps me going and keeps me being encouraged to be brave.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've got the example right there in front of you, like of someone who's like living the life that they wouldn't have otherwise, but for your actions for on behalf of that individual. So that's beautiful. And yeah, I ask this a lot to activists, especially activists who have done rescue work, and I think a lot of times the answer is sort of that animal, um, that they can sort of look back to this animal that or it's like a connection with an animal, like even like during a vigil, like for instance, like an animal that I saw that was on their
Yeah,
way to die. I made a promise to that animal or something. I spoke to Tom Harris, from the Shack campaign, and he described for
yeah,
me, yeah, he described being with all these dogs that he couldn't get out, and the police were bearing down on me. He said, "Well, I made a promise to that beagle that I would keep fighting for them." It's very
yeah.
beautiful, and yeah, it's very sad to me, and also beautiful and encouraging that we have people like you in the world. But it's also sad to me that other people aren't seeing that this is like something that's coming from such a place of love and care and tenderness and compassion. But yeah, so, like, what are you like outside of your activism work? Like, what are the things you can like do? Like, what kind of like books do you like to read and shows to kind of decompress and not be constantly feeling the weight of the world?
My I guess I'm just saying my green flag obsession is Big Bang Theory. That
Okay,
is
nice.
that's my therapy. Sheldon and
Okay,
Leonard are just my absolute faves. So anyone that knows me knows I love Big Bang Theory and a good cup of tea. Those moments are very sacred to me. um,
nice, nice.
in terms of other things that I do outside the clinic, I'm studying to do my avian nursing certificate so that I'll have more knowledge and be more qualified in birds.
Hmm.
Um, I offer a lot of advice and help to different cases. all over the world, really. And sometimes we'll go to sanctuaries and come and sort of see what's going on and see what other things we can maybe consider for their care. I
Hmm.
do that quite a lot on sheep, which is really, really, really rewarding and been really great. Obviously, the pet shop stuff that I do. I am trying to be mindful of like, yeah, my self care. So I go to the gym. I try to obviously eat well. I'm writing a book at the moment about my
Oh, nice.
story, which is exciting but also scary and long.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I kind of really enjoy the photography side of things, and I'm hoping to sort of put like a photography project together where I can sort of put all of my images together and kind of tell like the truth behind kind of what we're seeing in this country. So that's also
Hmm.
happening in the background. And yeah, just lots of other projects really, which really empower me. Yeah, and you know, going to conferences. I like teaching and speaking conferences. I really enjoy that. Doing workshops and
Hmm.
stuff. I did a workshop in Luxembourg, which was just brilliant. It was really well received and really fun.
Oh, yeah.
So I like doing stuff like that as well. Yeah.
Oh, cool, cool. Well, I will link down below to like your Instagram and stuff, but are there other ways that you would like people to follow your work or other ways that people can support you, perhaps?
So yeah, my Instagram, I do have a TikTok. It's not huge, but I have got some videos on there because you can do longer videos on there. Um, I keep sort of toying with the idea of maybe doing a Patreon just to support the pet shop work that we do and obviously all the advice and stuff I do. So that's maybe happening in the background, but all those kind of updates will generally be on my Instagram anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Nice. Well, you had mentioned Jane Goodall too. Are there other activists? Like, I'll ask you the same thing I asked Chris, which led me to you. Are there other activists that we should like keep our eyes on? Like, I'm talking more like the people that we might not know about, or even the people that we might know about that you're just like, yeah, those are the people that are are the people I follow and that sort of thing.
I think it's always really important to support like sanctuaries that are doing a very good job and the people that are behind those sanctuaries. Certainly here, there's lots of different sanctuaries that are doing really really wonderful work that are massively under supported, and I think
Mm,
that's something that's really inspiring and important to see because let's be honest, with rescue in any sense, there's always different levels of care. And sometimes the smaller, very well run rescues just don't have the time to be doing all the social media stuff, but they're actually really, really powerful sanctuaries and
mm,
organisations. You've got Hoppy Acre, you've got Sheep Ahoy as well in Kent, and they're just doing like phenomenal work, but just don't get as well recognised as they should be. Um, so in terms of activists and other people doing the work, I mean, Billy over in the Netherlands doing this pigeon string foot stuff is like so important because I think it's a very tangible thing that people can do without having to have loads and loads of knowledge and experience with birds, even if it's
mhm.
just like a small amount of action. So yeah, I think kind of the animal rights vegan based sanctuaries I'm a big fan of, and for me they are very inspiring. um I mean, I'm trying to think of anyone that you wouldn't have really have heard of, because I think most people have got like pretty good platforms now.
Mhm, mhm.
So yeah, but certainly if anyone was really interested and felt like they wanted specific people to follow, they just message me and I can send them a bunch of people. But there's so many amazing people I don't even know who to
Oh,
mention.
yeah, yeah. Well, you had mentioned a couple of mini me's, remember? Like, I don't know if those people would be comfortable getting a shout out, but do you want to?
Yeah, that's the only thing. That's another reason why I have to be careful with certain
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know if they
names
want.
and stuff that I want to say. But
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, it's been such a pleasure meeting you. And you had mentioned that your phone might die at some point, so so
Yeah.
we'll keep it kind of short. But yeah, it's been such a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for all the great work you're doing. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's really amazing. Like your passion really like comes forward, and yeah, I just feel very grateful that there are people like you in the world, honestly. So I hope that people will follow your work and support you in any way that they can. And I'm excited to see like where this campaign goes with the pet stores, and And yeah, like I think the future is bright with people like you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's nice to feel like part of like an international community. I think where I'm very
Absolutely.
independent and kind of not with an organization, it can be quite hard to be seen. There's a lot of activists out there that are doing a lot of stuff, but in terms of like the direct animal care, like there isn't enough of us. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's nice to kind of be included in this platform because I just want people to know what I know because that knowledge is so it has such a positive domino effect, which is potentially life saving. So the more people that can tap into this information, like the better for everyone, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Shakira. And it
Thank
was great to meet you. And
you.
yeah, and everybody go follow Shakira.